Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the Voice of Reason. Today we are in day 63 of the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. And I got to tell you, as I continue to watch, observe, and analyze this horrific conflict, I continue to be amazed at some of the things that I am seeing. For one, obviously, I had anticipated the possibility of the war exceeding 63 days, or frankly, could exceed 90, upwards to 365 days, given the capabilities of both nations. Now, with that being said, I'm very surprised in seeing the lack of area under the control of the Russian forces. I would have anticipated, depending on Russian strategy, and Russian strategy right now appears to be evolving and changing, and the Russian goals and objectives right now obviously are quite possibly much different than at day one of the conflict. And I think day one, initially, the Russians were looking at a operation to seize Kiev and topple the Zelensky regime. And the Russians were not able to do that. And I do think the Russians were preparing for some sort of extended counterinsurgency campaign where they utilized quite possibly Ukrainian forces as well. And that's probably one of the reasons why we have not seen a lot of the bridges over the Dnieper River destroyed by Russian forces. Now, as this Russian strategy changes, where we're starting to see the Russians really kind of focusing on taking the Donbass region, again, if I would have looked at this conflict as a goal that the Russians were going to seize control of the rest of the Luhansk and Donetsk regions, I would have never believed that it would have taken in excess of 60 days for for the Russian forces to maneuver and seize control of large areas of the east, especially near Kramatorsk, Sloviansk, the cities of Severodonetsk. I would have believed that if that was the Russian goal from the very get-go, and I believe it was, we would have seen that Russian forces would have rapidly maneuvered all the way to the Dnieper River very, very quickly. But unfortunately for the Russians, they've not been able to do that, and that's one of those main reasons. Obviously, is the support that the Ukrainians are getting from the West, and obviously the tenacity of the individual Ukrainian fighting man and its military leadership. There is no denying that the Ukrainians are and have been a thorn in the side of the Russian military apparatus since the start of this campaign. But and I've talked about some of the things that we've seen and really not seen. So the whole concept that the Russians haven't gone after key leadership facilities in Kiev, I find it odd, and maybe that is still the Russian hope that at some point they intend to seize Kiev and want to utilize some of those buildings and some of this infrastructure that the Ukrainians have at some point. And this is just a hypothesis, and right now I would say Kiev is pretty much off the table unless something drastic happens on the battlefield. But with that being said, if right now the Russian goal and the Russian war aim right now is to secure the eastern half of the country, east of the Dnieper River, I would think that the Russians would start looking at destroying some of these key bridges over the Dnieper River, and that has not been done yet, to my knowledge. The Ukrainians have rather extended supply lines now, and those supply lines go all the way past the border of Poland, deep into Poland and Romania, and the Poles, the Romanians, the United States, NATO is continuing to supply the Ukrainians via these large border areas, and this is where the supplies are coming from, where my cursor is circling. And eventually, a lot of these anti-tank weapon systems, munitions, everything that you need for the Ukrainians to fight a war eventually has to cross over the Dnieper River. And I find it interesting that the Russians have not yet destroyed all of these bridges now over the Dnieper River. And I mean, they can obviously continue to hold a foothold on the western side near Kherson, but the concept that they're going to continue to allow the Ukrainians to supply its forces in the field, and especially these Western systems that are coming in and they're getting, is really killing a lot of Russian soldiers. And again, it's just really surprised that the Russians have not yet taken action regarding the bridges over the Dnieper River. But yeah, absolutely very surprised that we have not seen the Russian forces maneuver better, especially in these vast open areas in the east. Look, this is opportune tank terrain for these large Russian armored operations. And we're not really seeing what we would see in a force that is designed to maneuver with heavy mechanization. And I mean, you know, what's funny, and I've done, it's not funny, but just compare and contrast. I've done videos on the Ethiopian civil war that is taking place, and some of those Tigrayan units operating out of Tigray when they launched their invasion, their counter invasion into the Amhara region, in some cases are moving more rapidly on foot than some of these Russian units appear to be, and again, I know that is because of the capabilities that we're seeing from the Ukrainians, and more importantly, the assistance the Ukrainians are getting from the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So and that kind of segues into the prospects now of escalation. Well, we're now starting to see, and have started to see, Ukrainian forces attack areas now deep inside of Russia proper. Now, you do hear that this is the possibility of some sort of false flag operation by the Russians, maybe to garner internal support for mass mobilization. I don't know. But I don't believe that's what that is. I don't believe the attacks that we've seen near Bryansk, the attacks near Belgorod, were false flag operations. I believe they were legitimate operations conducted by Ukrainian forces against Russian targets deep inside of the Russian Federation. And we've seen the Ukrainians use low-flying helicopters, and we've seen the Ukrainians also now use the TB2 Bayraktar drone to attack targets now deep inside of Russia. And it's glaringly apparent that Russian air defense systems are having some challenges with the radar cross-section of the TB2 drone. It comes in low, not excessively low, but low enough that the Russians, and at night, the Russians are having difficulty identifying this system and then bringing it down, as we've seen multiple targets getting hit inside of Russia. Now, is that to say the Russians have not been able to bring down any TB2 drones? No, that's not the case. There was an operation, quite possibly an operation by Ukrainian forces directed towards targets near Kursk. And we don't know if those targets were hit, but we have heard that a few Ukrainian drones that were attempting to conduct operations within the vicinity of Kursk. That's here where you can see my cursor circling. Major tank battle during World War II was also located in this vicinity as well. But the question is were the Ukrainians able to hit targets in Kursk and around Kursk? We don't know as of yet. But it does sound like the Russians are reporting that they were able to shoot down a few of these drones. Now, were they TB2s or some other system? Again, very, very difficult to say. And as we continue to watch this conflict, I think we'll continue to see the Ukrainians employ systems that they have, and not just the TB2 drone. Ukraine is as I've talked about before, a very large industrial nation state that is being directly supported by the West. So the prospects of more advanced cruise missile systems, maybe something based on the Neptune anti-ship system that was used against the Russian guided missile cruiser in the Black Sea, could be used against targets in the borderlands area, and even I would say at this point the possible prospect or the capability that the Ukrainians could launch something towards Moscow is a very real possibility, and maybe that is a reason why the Russians have not yet attacked some of these key command and control nodes located in downtown Kiev. We just have not seen that yet. We've seen some communication and television towers get hit on the outskirts, but targets such as the Defense Ministry, the Ukrainian intelligence service, we have not seen the Russians attack those main headquarters sites in downtown Kiev. So is the Russians holding back out of possible fear that they are aware that the Ukrainians may have a unique capability to, I wouldn't say a unique capability, but a capability to launch some sort of cruise missile towards Moscow? Is that a possibility? I mean, the Ukrainians have that technology to deploy a system with that sort of distance. It's not outside the scope of what the Ukrainians are able to do, and then the question is, do the Russians have the ability to counter that Ukrainian system, whatever that could be? And is that one of the reasons why we're not seeing Russians hit some of those areas in Kiev? Another thought process is maybe there is deep planted intelligence moles at the highest echelons of the Ukrainian government and defense ministry, and they're worried about hitting one of those individuals. I would say it's possible, but I don't think that would prevent the Russians from conducting said operation. As I would say at this point, success in the war effort is probably more important than the life of one intelligence asset that is operating in the Kiev Ministry of Defense. But we're right now we're continuing to see what is more or less, at least on the surface, a war of attrition. There hasn't been a great deal of movement by the Russians as of yet. Could we see something in the not too distant future as the Russians continue to prep and prepare the battlefield using its heavy artillery and long-range rocket systems and tactical air assets? Possibly, we could. but we haven't seen it yet, and we're in day 63 now. At the same time, it's very interesting that we have not seen the Russians really attempt to degrade and destroy the ability of Ukrainians to deploy forces over the Dnieper River and to prevent further munitions and weapons deliveries from coming into the east. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's hard to say that why the Russians are doing what they're doing. I mean, I've seen a lot of things in the course of this conflict that make me ask why, and you just, at this point, I've kind of stopped doing that because I mean, what can you say or do when you see some of this stuff? But that's kind of where we're at. Obviously the most heaviest fighting right now continues to be just south of Kharkiv and just to the north of Donetsk in this area here. What the Russians are hoping will become the Kramatorsk and Sloviansk pocket at some point. But we do know the Ukrainians have fortified this area significantly. Kramatorsk, Sloviansk would be an incredibly difficult target for the Russians to eventually seize control over. Obviously, they would have to encircle it and then reduce it, and then occupy it at some point. I think the level of resistance and preparation that we're seeing from the Ukrainians that the Russians could be facing within the vicinity of Kramatorsk, Sloviansk, and even to a lesser extent, I don't want to say lesser extent, an equal extent, Severodonetsk as well. The same sort of level of resistance that we're seeing in Mariupol, I would think the Russians could expect in those three cities to the north. And at the same time, we continue to hear individuals such as the Russian foreign minister talk about the prospects of a nuclear exchange now, or World War III. And, as the West continues to supply Ukraine, I think the Russians are at some point going to have no choice but to consider Poland, possibly Romania, but more so Poland, as a direct adversary in this ongoing war, in which it may feels that it needs to take the war to Western Europe at some point. Now, does that involve tanks crossing the Belarusian Polish border? No, I don't think so. I think more likely what you could see is some sort of cruise missile strike or something to if this escalation actually occurs, where we do see NATO assets and more specifically Poland start to get into the war, in which we see the Russians striking out at Poland. I think it would be a Russian tactic to try and divide the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. I think the possibility of something happening in the Baltics is omnipresent. I think the Russians, while some of its capabilities have been degraded, certainly still have the capability to launch an operation into Estonia, and will continue to have that capability as this conflict continues. But that's kind of where we're sitting. We're watching things very closely day by day, and I would say that the prospects of escalation are increasing. I don't think they're decreasing. I think as the war continues, I think Western attention span seems to deviate, but that's probably not the case in terms of, you look at Russia and obviously the Ukraine itself. It's this war is omnipresent, and what the West is doing in terms of providing this direct capability, and quite possibly, I would not rule out that Western personnel have been involved in some of these operations, and maybe even some Western equipment, some clandestine methods, something with stealth properties possibly being used in this conflict are occurring and will continue to occur. And I have no doubt that obviously 20, 30 years from now, the world still exists. We'll find out much more in terms of how the United States assisted the Ukrainians and quite possibly some other nation states as well. But that's where we stand for today. We're watching again what we're looking at is what's happening in the East right now, and if the Russians are in fact able to at some point conduct a breakthrough and start to maneuver, and we haven't seen it yet. And part of this continues to be a Russian preparation on the battlefield, which it should have probably done at the very beginning. I think the Russians will go back and do an after-action review, and I think they'll have to do some deep diving into some of the really massive errors that occurred in this campaign for themselves as well. But that's all we have for today. We'll continue to monitor, report, and bring you content for your consumption. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for joining us.